In the heart of rural Iowa, where the sky met the earth in an unbroken line of gold and blue, there lived a young girl named Emily. She was 12, with a wild imagination that rivaled the summer storms that often rolled over the plains. Emily lived in a small farmhouse with her parents, surrounded by miles and miles of cornfields stretching as far as the eye could see. The fields were like an ocean of stalks, whispering and swaying with every breeze. Emily loved those fields, or at least she did, until the whispers started. It was the middle of August, and the air was heavy with the sweet scent of ripening corn. Emily spent most of her days playing outside, exploring the boundaries of her family's land. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, painting the world in shades of amber and rose, Emily wandered a little farther than usual. She ventured deep into the cornfield, feeling the coolness of the shadows and the rough leaves brushing against her skin. The world was hushed here, the only sound the rustling of the corn. As Emily pushed through the stalks, she stumbled upon a small clearing, hidden deep within the field. In the center of the clearing stood an old, abandoned scarecrow. Its straw-stuffed body was slumped and its head hung low, as if weighed down by the secrets it had kept over the years. Emily had seen scarecrows before, but this one was different. Its eyes, made of dark, sunken buttons, seemed to follow her as she moved. A chill ran down her spine, but she shook it off. After all, it was just a scarecrow, she told herself. She approached it, her curiosity getting the better of her. As she reached out to touch its raggedy shirt, a voice, soft and whispery, drifted through the corn. "Emily?" She froze, her hand inches from the scarecrow. Her heart pounded in her chest and she looked around, but there was no one there. "Emily." The voice came again, a little louder this time. It was a child's voice, high and lilting, like a lullaby carried on the wind. "Who's there?" Emily called out, her voice trembling. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Filled her with dread. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily's parents went into town, leaving her alone in the house. The air was still, the world outside bathed in twilight. Emily sat in the living room, trying to read a book, but her eyes kept drifting to the window, to the dark silhouette of the cornfield. Then she heard it, faint, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. "Emily." She dropped the book, her heart hammering in her chest. The voice was closer now, coming from just outside the window. Emily's skin prickled and she stood, moving towards the sound. As she approached the window, she saw movement in the cornfield. A figure, small and shadowy, was standing at the edge of the field, just beyond the first row of stalks. "Emily, come play!" the voice called, and the figure stepped forward. Revealing itself in the dim light, it was a little girl about Emily's age, with long dark hair and a pale face. Her eyes were wide and empty, and her mouth was twisted into a sad smile. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She knew deep down that the girl wasn't real, that she couldn't be. But there she was, standing at the edge of the cornfield, beckoning. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. The girl didn't answer. She just smiled and turned, walking back into the corn. The whispers grew louder, filling Emily's head. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. It was as if the whispers had taken hold of her, pulling her towards the cornfield. Before she knew it, Emily was at the door, stepping outside into the cool night air. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her towards the field. The whispers were all around her now, surrounding her, guiding her. She reached the edge of the field, and the whispers fell silent. The air was thick with anticipation. Emily took a deep breath and stepped into the corn, the stalks closing around her like a shroud. The clearing was just ahead, and the scarecrow stood waiting, its head still hung low. The little girl was there too, standing in front of the scarecrow, her back to Emily. "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. The girl turned, her empty eyes locking onto Emily's. She raised a hand, pointing at the scarecrow. Emily followed her gaze, and her heart stopped. The scarecrow's head was no longer slumped. It had lifted, and its button eyes were glowing with an eerie light. Its mouth, stitched into a permanent grin, seemed to stretch wider. The whispers filled the air again, but now they were coming from the scarecrow, a chorus of voices, young and old, male and female, all blending together. "Stay with us, Emily." The scarecrow's arms moved, slow and stiff, as if waking from a long sleep. It reached out towards her, its fingers made of twisted twigs and straw. Emily wanted to run, to scream, but she was frozen, her feet rooted to the ground. "Join us!" The voices were deafening now, a roar in her ears. The little girl moved closer, her empty eyes boring into Emily's. She took Emily's hand, her touch cold as ice, and together they walked towards the scarecrow. As Emily stepped into the embrace of the scarecrow, the whispers ceased, replaced by a silence so profound it was like the world had been swallowed whole. The scarecrow's arms closed around her, and Emily felt the darkness wash over her, pulling her down, down into the depths of the cornfield. The next morning, Emily's parents returned to find the farmhouse empty. They called for her, searched the fields, but there was no sign of their daughter. The cornfield stood silent, its secrets hidden among the stalks. Deep within the field, in the hidden clearing, the scarecrow stood tall. Its button eyes gleamed in the sunlight, and a new voice joined the whispers that floated through the corn. "Emily,